Welcome, everybody. This is the first Fireside Chat live stream for AIGA Raleigh. The idea here is we're going to have monthly live streams, likely hosted by myself, with random guests that I choose to invite onto this little live stream / pseudo podcast. The point of it is to be able to discuss with creatives that are doing cool things, or that I think they're doing cool things, kind of how they got their start, so where their spark started, and then how they kept that flame running. So hence the fire in the background. So our first guest this month is our friend Alex. Why don't you say hello?
Hi. Hi, Mom.
Cool. So I prepared some questions, but I think a lot of this is just going to go off the cuff, kind of like we talked about a little bit. But I want to start. So if you had to tell, if you're talking to a 5-year-old, right, explaining to them what you do, how would you do it? Right.
If I was explaining to a 5-year-old what I do, probably do what they do for like their drawing classes before I get paid for it now. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I think I get to doodle and draw and sometimes like talk about things that aren't really there in the sky that there's like potential, right? I think every time that a kid's drawing, it's always about their imagination and the world that they perceive it as, and they're trying to convey that in their drawings. And I think I'm trying to bridge that gap between what my client's seeing and then what I'm visualizing for them, and trying to like, now my vocabulary is hopefully expanded since I was 5, and now I can hopefully convey that well to them, and try to see things, try to get them to buy into my perspective. And I think that's the hardest part for creatives, right? It's like how do you get people on board and in your mission to like trust you to get the deliverables across the end of the day. So
cool. Yeah, and I don't plan on spending a lot of time talking about actual work, because I think there's plenty podcasts and stuff that do that a lot better than I intend to. But I would be curious to give people a little bit of background. So you just started or launched your own thing. Can you give us like kind of an idea of what you're working with under that umbrella? Kind of some update on your kind of project load kind of thing?
Yeah, so I left being the creative director at Twitch to start my own shop. What I got to do at Twitch was really cool. I got to start working in like a little bit more environmental and merchandise and things that were like more nitty gritty and substantial in my eyes. I know like substantiality is in the eyes of the beholder.
Subjective, sure.
But like to me, I think working with physical products and working with retail spaces and trying to help consumers and retailers kind of mesh into like a holistic relationship is really what I love. And so I wanted to help smaller businesses than just like an Amazon-owned company, like actually tell their stories better. And at the time that I was also being the creative director there, I also had some really great clients that allowed me to kind of leave and have that leap of faith and know, okay, I can still eat this month, you know, whatever, and scale that up. So the future of the business looks very much more like, I want to do like big branding design systems for clients, right? Whether that's like, it's not just your logo. It's like, how do you think about every interaction from the physical to digital? How do you portray yourself online? How do you convey every single little aspect of your collateral? And then really ranging out the services that we can do. So photography, branding, retail, 3D, environmental, all that stuff is like kind of the sweet spot. I get really bored just working on one thing. I started off in digital, so I was very like started off in HTML 2.0 and all that stuff, and I was just like, okay, tables, columns, grids, rows, cool. I can do it. I can whip it up really fast. It's fun, but I think there's something to me about holding something that you make, or like seeing people's reactions to things that are actually produced rather than just a website. I think when HTML5 came out, everybody was really excited about these new interactions you're having with the websites, and those digital brand experiences were really cool. But one of the things that I got to really enjoy at my time at Twitch was seeing items that I sold and designed and did everything for out in the environment and seeing people's reaction to that. And just like, like I did a hat, or I did a logo for these like Twitch longboards, and some guy ripped the logo off of our mock-up page. Like it wasn't even like out in the public yet. It was just a teaser of these items. And he grabbed the logo and he came to the event with the hat on. I was like, how'd you get that? And he's like, I stole the logo and I put it on a hat because I loved it so much.
Oh my God. Well, as awesome as that must have made you feel, there's that argument of like, You stole my shit, asshole.
Oh, that whatever. People steal it all the time.
That's great.
He was such a super fan that it's like it was so endearing. And like we're friends on LinkedIn now. We're friends. Is that the right term? Networked on LinkedIn. We're best friends. We slide into each other's DMs all the time. It's fine.
That's great. No, but that's cool. So I mean, I kind of share that same like intimate like affirmation of like getting able to see your work like live, right? I mean, there's definitely something that says that, you know, creating digital assets, sites, apps, etc., all that's great work, but there's something different about physically holding something that was once on like your machine and became something real. Can you think back, is there a moment like when you realized that was kind of like the path you wanted to run? I don't mean recently. I mean, like, is there a moment like you could think back like in your childhood or college years, whatever, that you were like, you know what, regardless of where I end up, like I'd like to make these kinds of things, and like what kind of stirred that itch inside of you?
I think the big transition for me was like there was like twofold. I think one was understanding like in this shift for digital that brands didn't understand like how to translate or how to build a responsive brand deck, right? Like how do you build for digital? And I was like, oh my God, that kind of brought me into this like logo branding world. And then understanding more of like, oh, this is actually translates across all your collateral. And that became kind of like a point of interest for me. And then I think living in Silicon Valley, I just saw so much stuff that was just so fleeting, right? Like I think there's so much of just living in that environment where everybody's getting tons and tons of money to make the next Instagram or the next Facebook or whatever. And it's just like, there was just so much turnover in terms of the creative, right? Like it's so easy to spin up a website and then just destroy it, right? Like if I messed up at Twitch and I ordered 3,000 shirts and they don't sell, you have to physically burn the product. Like there's something so much more, I don't know, like tangible about the fact that it has to go through a manufacturing process. You have to be so certain about something that you're willing to invest the money to test it. Whereas I think it's super easy to be like, okay, I'm going to spend a day on this thing. If it doesn't get enough attributions online, then I'm just going to delete it. And I think that's good in some ways, but I also like the idea of like things lasting a little bit longer. And I think humans like perceive space so much more differently than just their screens. Like I think whenever you're doing like whiteboarding or storyboarding or notes, like category sorting and stuff like that, it helps so much more to start using walls around you because you can like physically assign a wall to a certain category and your mind categorizes it differently. So I think those reactions and interactions that you have in a physical space just last with you a little bit longer. Like I think you could always remember like going to like a museum and seeing like the exhibition art and you're just like, oh my God, these dinosaurs look so incredible, right? Because it's a 3D space and it feels like it's real. I think if you were to see that in a VR set, it's not going to have that same impact on you because something is like disconnected a little bit.
Yeah, and I think there's something to say that you know, preparing digital assets for the web, for whatever, there's a lot of production time that goes in. There's a lot of testing, but I think it takes it to another level when you have to prepare something for like a sewing machine, right? Or for a screen printer, and you're so used to seeing the item, you know, on a screen or on a device that you're working on, or when you're printing out a test print on your garbage office printer and you're trying to figure out how the colors are going to mesh with a shirt background or even like a vinyl. I mean, to plan at that kind of scale systematically, especially from a brand perspective, like when you're building out, you know, brand aesthetics or collateral for different pieces, and then the client goes, well, also, by the way, we're going to take that banner you made and it's going to be 600 feet on the side of this building. You're like, oh shit. You know, it's different, I think, it's a different way of thinking to have to then presume the settings, so to speak, of the final product, where you have to then literally plan ahead for any kind of like malformation on the actual texture of the material or in your file process, or if the printer, you know, has to make some adjustments, right? And then you don't know if it's going to be exactly like you sent it over. So
I think that's like when you're talking about like fabrication processes and stuff like that, I think that's where you can start really geeking out. Like I think my first experience of like going to a paper like clampet paper codes, like
a mill.
Yeah, they're like exhibit room, right, where you can like go in and touch everything and like see what you're going to be like actually printing on.
Yeah.
Nerding out about each eggshell white, and you're like, oh, there's so many subtleties, but each subtlety has its own kind of flavor to it, right? That's super fun. Like I think snowboard graphics are really cool to me, where it's like some of them have like these inlaid like graphic sheets underneath, and then they'll like on top of it they'll do a composite layer, and that composite layer has the like multiply effect that we try to do with like our design files, but it's like a real thing interacting with the object underneath it and giving it a different translucence and a really cool like just appearance, which is like really sweet.
That's awesome. No, and I think it's important. It's a cool thing to point out. And so I know you have enough like a affinity for skateboarding, right? Longboarding. Have you had the chance to design for those kinds of clients as well?
Yeah, I had a skateboard company in Cyprus reach out to me, and I did their branding and 3 skateboards and 4 longboard graphics or something like that. And then at Twitch, we were lucky enough to partner with Land Yachts, who I ride for, and we got to do 2 different boards, a dinghy and a battle axe, and that was super fun because it's like, I don't know, ever since I've been writing for them, which is like 2012, I've always wanted to do a graphic for them, but never had the opportunity or like the idea to be like, hey guys, can you hire me? You know?
Yeah.
So it's like really fun getting to like see that in process and help out with their design team and kind of understand their process and then build out the graphics and really try to build something that resonated with the Twitch community, which is very different from a normal skateboarding scene, right? So like,
sure.
Just understanding your audience demographics and trying to like cater to them is always a fun challenge.
So at this point, you're kind of getting to curate your own client load, right? I mean, compared to what you were doing before. So I imagine there's more time to pick and choose, but how do you find, like, I think part of the struggle of like the modern day designer, right, is finding the time to play, to experiment, to like test, right? Do you get to do that kind of thing? I mean, how do you work it into your schedule? Is it kind of like you now make time for it, or?
So I would say that I'm not as picky right now. Just because I'm trying, so essentially what I want to be in the next 5 years is I want to be the next Collins level of design shop, right? Collins had a co-founder that helped kind of with the financial things, which is great. That helps it really easily. In my head, I'm grabbing as much work as possible so that I can hire more freelancers, so that I can get my work to have my first full-time hire by January, so that I can start like really allocating the resources to allow my team to start playing more and attract more of those like design system oriented clients.
Right.
Luckily, like I have a handful of really incredible clients that like at the end of the day, work is work, and I still have to do like these assets or those assets, and then there's not that much play, right? It's like, here's a brand system that might be a little bit antiquated. It's not really my style, but I still have to deliver that to the high level of degree that they're looking for.
Sure.
And things like that. So but this week, like I got to play Monday and Tuesday for a client, and it was wonderful, like really helping to build out like this new design system stuff. And I think you can't always expect to play. And I think that's the fallacy that designers have when they like start looking for their jobs, right? Like, I just want somebody to pay my bills and I just want to do dope shit all day. And you're like, it's not realistic, kid. But then at the same time, like if you're not satisfied doing the work you're doing, maybe you need to shift your portfolio and stuff like that. So for me, like I'm lucky that I have the ability to do that within certain projects for certain clients. Sure. You don't always get to do that, but it's when you do, it's those moments of delight are so just incredible. I was just in euphoria for like 2 days, and it was just great.
Yeah. Well, and it's cool because it takes time to get to that point, right? Where you're ready to accept that, like, look, it's not going to be all these glamorous, fun exploration style projects all the time, right? And I think it takes a lot of, number one, projects that are not fun, 2, different jobs, 3, a reality check, like to get to that point. But correct me if I'm wrong, but you have a non-traditional design path as well, because I was in a design major, so it's always interesting. I like to hear, and I think other people benefit from hearing the stories of like the folks that didn't have the traditional design school to teach them some process, that kind of thing. And then they get into the field, and in some ways more prepared or less prepared than others, but it's always interesting to hear how those who didn't go through that almost regimented, here's how you begin your design thinking path, how they got to where they are. Would you You have any light to shed on that?
Ooh. So yeah, I'm a big proponent of like the whole you don't need to go to design school mentality. I think it teaches you the tools exceptionally well. But what you do with those tools, like you can learn those tools now online for free.
Right.
Like there's so many great tutorial sites, or for a small fee, a fraction of what it would cost, you can go on there and with just some self-motivation, you can do it yourself, which is incredible. I don't think all design schools are equal, so it's unfair for me to like lump them all in one category. But for me, I think I took a lot of like psychology classes in college, and that stuff always jived with me. That was something that I think when you're in university, you're thinking, oh, I hate this class, or in high school even, you're like, math, who needs math? I don't need that, you know? And so it doesn't connect with you because you have no like real world experience to guide it off of. And I think as soon as you're in a class that you can like tie back to reality, you're gonna like digest that information and it'll stay with you longer. So for me, those psychology classes were that, where I was like, oh my God, this makes sense. I have a client who's doing this right now, or I've got a client's campaign that I'd love to pitch this way because of these psychology principles. And I think it would benefit them and stuff like that. It's like super helpful. And I think that mentality has been with me throughout all my design career, where it's like end user experience to me isn't digital. It's like holistic across all mediums. So how do we create the best user experience across every single piece of collateral for our client? So yeah, I would say it just requires hard work. And I think a lot of people are afraid of hard work.
It's funny you bring that up, specifically the user experience portion, because I had like an aha moment that I've kind of used as like a guiding light in some ways. Because I think the hardest part about current state design, right, is that the industry is changing. I mean, you've got people that are specializing in interface type work. You got people specializing in research and in branding, et cetera. Whereas it almost used to be just, okay, we have this designer who made magical things and that was it, right? So I think part of that is there's an education side, like on our side, the designer side, that just like, we need to kind of get our shit together and figure out where these divisions start and stop, right? And in that same note, you know, whoever that ruling body is then has to discuss with employers and clients and stuff. Go, okay, here's what you really need, the individual you're looking for. Because I think, like for me, the term user experience designer is completely redundant, right? As and this is nothing against folks that are UX designers by title or whatever, but what I don't understand is how you could be a designer and not design for your user, like from the get-go. Like, I don't care if you're making marketing collateral or a logo or an elaborate site. Like, if you're not designing with the end person's, like the person's using it in mind, like, you're not designing. You're just making art, which is fantastic, but it's not the goal, right? It's not the point of whatever you're working on.
Yeah. I mean, I think with any profession and any career path and just people in general, I think there's people that are out of touch. I just saw a guy on LinkedIn who was apparently like the BART UX director or something like that, just like saying things about how great the Bay Area rapid transit was and all this stuff. And he was just absolutely delusional about how great it was. And then he was let go, I think, the day afterwards, but which was great. Just seeing that like instant karma. But he was just like absolutely enamored with his own things, and he had no context of like what real people are doing. So I think being a great designer requires you to be super empathetic and understand people and try to get into their lifestyle a little bit more and just kind of be there, be present.
Yeah. I think that's what I struggle with. I'm freelancing now, and I think part of the hard part with that is depending on the time constraint, right? I mean, there's project duration can sometimes be quick. It can sometimes be long, it depends. And I think there's like a threshold, like a magic number of like when you can really get inundated in a brand to understand, or a company or whatever, to understand really what their user base or customers, whatever, are looking for. And I think you can make some generalizations, but that's why like I've always been partial to and only pursued at this point, like in-house roles, because I felt that I could really get involved at a deeper level with what the company had going on. And the agency life kind of made me nervous because it was like, how do you hop right from client to client and be able to deliver? And they do it wonderfully. People farther experienced than I am, but it's just something I can never wrap my head around. Right. I mean, I can make stuff, but it doesn't mean it's going to be right. Or it may seem right, but long term, it's like, did that really hit the strategy we were looking for? Like, I don't know. But,
totally. Yeah. I mean, the in-house versus agency debate is a good one.
We'll save that for another live.
If you want to do it, we can dive into it. But yeah, no, I get it. Like it depends on what you're looking for. I would just put it that way.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. So I wonder, I want to get a little bit to the core of the podcast, right? I think part of this is, so we've talked a lot about the way you approach your stuff, right? Kind of what you're working on now. What I'm curious about is, was there a moment like in your life so far that like spurred like you knowing you wanted to do something creative, like long term? Like a lot of people like, oh well, I was an artist when I was a kid, and that's a great answer. But like for me, like I have a specific like moment, and it took a while to like figure it out, but like where I can remember back that I was like, all right, I realized that was the turning point where I pursued design. And it's like weird and it sticks out, and I wonder if anybody else has that kind of thing.
Man, I think that's a great question. I feel like I'm a little bit outside of that, weirdly. Like I feel like I didn't have a moment. I really got lucky. I feel like I just stumbled into it. I think there was a turning point in college that I was like, oh, like I should be doing something more creative. Like I was taking like business classes and doing marketing and studying marketing, but there was no, like what I was really wanting to do was get into the advertising world and work for like White and Kennedy and do like all the Nike commercials or all the like Old Spice commercials and things like that. That was like what I wanted to do. But then my career path, my degree wasn't getting me closer to that. And then there was a shift where I was like talking to a chief marketing officer at an agency, and he's like, oh yeah, like you need to have like a book. I was like, what do you mean a book? He's like, a portfolio. I was like, what do you mean a portfolio? Like I had no clue.
Yeah.
And then like that moment on, I was like, cool, change degrees. I need to find something to like, even if the degree isn't a design degree, I have to find the closest thing possible in my university to get me there. And how do I do that? And then I was just spinning up client work, and I was already doing client work kind of in the meantime, but I had no idea that I could like actually make a living off of that. Like
sure.
If you were to tell me that a long time ago, I would have been like, yeah, right. Okay, whatever. So yeah, I got really lucky. And now I think I've just like continuously stumbled into one thing to the next. I mean, there's a lot of hard work that goes on behind the scenes, but like a lot of stumbling. And I think a lot of people like try to glamorize it. Like if they were like the hands of God, like reached down and like blessed them with this like ability to be super successful. It's like, no, dude, there's a lot of eating shit along the way.
Well, and even so now, I mean, you're at the point where you're looking to bring people in to help, right? So there's an immense amount of trust that you then have to kind of put upon them to number one, perform, right? And two, like give the same level of work and consistency and everything that you were planning to deliver, right? And then let it represent your company. And this isn't like an advertisement, like what are some things that trigger you to say, okay, this person is going to be worth like partnering with? So I think that's part, like we talk about like designers who collaborate together for fun stuff, like that's great. But I think to build relationships, to do client work, it takes a whole different level of trust that I think takes time to build, of course. And so I always wonder, like in solo shops like yours currently, or some other small ones, like when you're bringing in people like that, what are the things that give you the green light of like, okay, this is going to be someone I could really lean on versus someone that you're just testing out? Yeah.
Well, like luckily I have a pretty solid team right now. But like there's still roles that I need to fill on my team. Like I need to find a consistent, like strong brand designer. Like I think for me, finding a strong brand designer that views things the way I view it, is really difficult. And because that's so close to my heart, it's like it's harder for me to detach from that. I have UI designers, I have like production designers, I have some like InDesign wizards, and it's great that way. But like those relationships have always been, they've been friendships beforehand and people that I already trusted, right? We can have like a real dialogue around deliverables and timelines and things like that. The relationships that I had as like acquaintances or people that I thought might be good for projects, 10 out of 10 times have failed me to just be like, hey, I have this thing that I just like, I'm paying you to play right now. Like if you're a junior designer focusing on brand, I just need some extra concepts to like put into a deck. And I just need some help. And it's just like either want exorbitant amounts of money for being like really junior, or they just can't deliver. And it's like, but that's like something that as a business owner, like those are risks that I have to take. I have to be comfortable with that. And I have to know that if I'm hiring a new person to try something, that I also need to have enough time on my end to backfill if they mess up. It's like at the end of the day, my reputation and my business have only worked out because of word of mouth. Like I've never really had a portfolio. I have like my Behance, but like I haven't touched social media. Like this whole thing has been off of word of mouth, and I'm doing really well, but it's been crazy. So yeah, I think it's trust and seeing people's work and trying to like, I think people get really like hurt when they try to like join a company or an in-house agency or an agency, and they're like, why didn't they hire me, right? And it's like, maybe you didn't convey something the way they do. Like your ideologies are different, right? And it's so hard to like that's really hard because like when I was at Twitch, I had 3,000 people apply for my roles that I was hiring for. And I reviewed each one of those 3,000 portfolio pieces. And it makes it so hard.
God, talk about, no, thank you.
Which is crazy, right? Like but like I'm taking that on and I can quickly diagnose like if you're gonna be a good fit. And my roles were pretty, like I needed like rock stars across every media type, which is really hard because I'd had like UI designers apply and I was like, I don't think you really like the job description. Good try though. But like people have to like potentially illustrate things, understand like environmental design, understand retail design and merchandise design, and potentially jump into a website design if they needed to. So just like a traditional like jack of all trades designer.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I think we have I think a bad habit of, or as an industry, of like glamorizing the freelance life, right? Of like doing your own thing and jumping ship to have your own clients. So what do you think that having to go through those things, like sorting through all those portfolios and stuff and being able to have that like leadership role at Twitch has prepared you better for now taking on your own business? Like what are the things you still find challenging that you didn't expect? Like there's always like the financial side, right? There's just the paperwork that everyone hates doing and like the filing of all that shit. That's obvious. But like what's the stuff that comes up now that you really didn't foresee? If any?
So I was freelancing before I moved to Silicon Valley. I was living in Texas and freelancing and stuff. So when I moved, I went and joined an in-house team. And so I've like just seen how like, and I've built out the design teams and seen how market teams grow. So I understand how design can be like, you have design debt and it can be a blocker for you to get your marketing campaigns out. So I understand and empathize with my clients that come to me. Mm-hmm. I think being in-house is a good way to understand the business and see it on somebody else's dime and like, okay, see how different roles work with each other, like really understand other people's roles, and that will help you understand how you can service them. Because like at the end of the day, design is a service industry. Like you're okay, the color, like the client didn't like that color you picked. Is it gonna be the end of the world if you have to change it? No, but like I've seen so many junior designers just go in there and like guns blazing. They're just like boop, 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 popping it off. And it's like, all right, man, like it happens. Like you think like everything is always going to be approved. Like, yeah. So like eventually maybe if you're like a Gretel, New York, and you're just like doing Netflix and they're coming to you for these like super aspirational, really incredible things, it's like, great, do that. Like we trust you, but those are millions of dollar projects. So somebody did the salesmanship already. You're just creating assets.
For sure. So now with that, I mean, do you feel like personally, do you have a specific style you've tried to stick to, or you've let that kind of organically grow as you've gone through to be able to mesh with different worlds and hop between, departments or whatever? How's that working?
That's a great question. I've done like, you would probably like laugh because my aesthetic is so not like this, but I've done like, there's like little kids outfits, like little onesie type dresses and stuff. They're called smocks. And I did like a company's stuff called Stelly Belly, and they did all smocked like these things, and they're crushing it on the internet right now. They're just selling so much. But it was like pink. They wanted a bird. They wanted like really cutesy. And I'm just like, if you look at my portfolio, it's pretty masculine and it's pretty like bold. And I try to stay within that realm because I think that's always just been the aesthetic that I've always been drawn to. So I think naturally it just comes out. But I try to be as adaptive as possible. But like there's sometimes, you have those like client projects that are a little bit more like feminine on the scale of that, like that's totally fine. And like I think for me, I love the projects that are a little bit more elegant. So like I would love to do like a makeup company or something like that, mascara or something like that, where you can like really start getting into the elegance and like how the perception is supposed to be perceived. Because I think that like that creates like a really interesting dialogue that's still like, I don't know, fashion's like really good at that, where it's like masculine and elegant, but it kind of blurs the lines a little bit.
So is it like the constraints around that intrigue you? Like where's that come from? Like where's that core of like particularly that fashion line of like the gender kind of appeal side? Like where does that stem from?
I think I love like the idea of contrasting things where it's like black and white, high and low, like these kind of concepts around like polar opposites create this really nice like contrast to each other. So as soon as you can start bringing that into the mix, I think it becomes really interesting. And those companies have like just a really, that market is so saturated. And I think working in saturated markets is also a really cool constraint because you're trying to like trend reject almost, where you're being the antithesis of everything else that's happening, right? Like if you go to a beer aisle, it's crazy. And now like marijuana is like the new thing, right? Like marijuana packaging is crazy. Like Pentagram did Snoop Dogg's branding like 3 years ago. Like the fact that Snoop Dogg is getting, I mean, I don't know how much whatever he's doing himself, but like the fact that he's licensing it out and somebody is like approaching Pentagram to pay them hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for like this thing that used to be sold on this corner, you know, like it's pretty awesome. I think that's the next kind of frontier, whereas like I think craft beer is going back, digressing a little bit. Whiskey bottles feel a little bit repetitive. Like how do you start creating things that are different and have their own identity and contrast the market again? It's pretty cool.
Well, I think that's you're right, because I think part of that, it stems back to what you said earlier. I mean, the interesting part about all of that is all those are, most of the things you've referenced are things you have to experience, right? It's not something you necessarily are navigating to. It's something that you literally tangibly will hold and then make a judgment on based on the aesthetic. And not to get all like fluffy, but I think that's the cool part about design, right? It's like that's, you hit every portion of everything, right? I mean, you're talking about a table, the camera, like a microphone, a cup, like everything there was touched by a designer at some point or at some level, you know, and that's not only is it crazy intriguing, but it's also like hella stressful because that's like a lot of pressure, you know. But I think in the humor behind that is the flip side is like, yeah, but most of the time designers are just like, ah, shit, undo, you know, like that's the normal day. It's not like, oh, we have to go and like explore this aisle so we can compare and contrast like, together, you know. And I think it's a really cool like opposite ends of the spectrum, like kind of what you're talking about, that really fits the full gamut of like our industry, right?
Yeah, I saw the most gorgeous olive oil bottles the other day. So if my dad's listening, he's great. Olive oil, like olive oil needs to be in a dark bottle so that it doesn't like get bad over time, right?
Sure.
They took the like opposite and went to like a porcelain vase. So each one was color coordinated and they were like matte and they were porous and they were textured and it was just gorgeous to look at. And then they had flavored ones because that's the trend now. But they would color coordinate them and they felt almost like kind of like a Pantone swatch of just beautiful bottles that also told you what was in them. But then contrasted, if you looked at a bottle, like the olive oil aisle is going to be all green bottles, right? Like dark green, like boom, throw some ceramic like bottles in there and it looks just astonishing. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, I think it lends a nice like segue into like how to merge those worlds, right? Because you've got all these weird things occurring where you can take like a ceramic bottle like that and just disrupt, for a shitty buzzword, what's the status quo. Do what?
We're going to the front page with the buzzword.
Yeah, right. But I mean that's the cool part. I mean, the tangible market in that respect has so much potential, and that's like I always hate people like, oh, print's dead. It's like, no. Print's not dead. Like newspapers may be dead, but like that wall back there, that's full of people's artwork that I like saw at conferences or met in person or ordered online. Like that's not dead. And yeah, given it's like a small, like I'm a designer, it's like made for designers. Like I get that. But like you got products like this dope ass shirt. Like, yeah, designers are going to get it, but there's plenty of other versions of this that aren't design focused. And that's print. I don't give a shit what you say. Like that's print, you know?
Totally. Well, I think like everything is so cyclical. Like you're starting to see the resurgence in like and print stuff where everybody's starting to like actually care again. And if you ask any marketing person, like, what do you want to print on? They're like, the best cardstock. Like, they're never going to be like, I want something cheap and flimsy, right? Like, everybody knows that there's a physical nature to these things. So I think it's just a matter of time before like the world's either merge more, where like you start getting into like, this is like put on your tinfoil hats, everybody.
Sure.
But like start getting to a little bit more like digital paper, right? Where it's like more tangible and like malleable. Or like it starts getting a little bit more back just super analog, where it's just really high quality printing, really caring about how everything's set. Like, I think because you see so much less of that, I think now it's like, oh my God, it's when people see it, they really appreciate it.
Yeah. And that's why things like live screen printing is going everywhere. You know, people getting to put a graphic on their own t-shirt, or team building, you know, in that realm. It's getting your hands dirty again, where we were so much like, no, everything's got to be on the computer, like the first MacBook and the iPad and the pencil. And you're like, oh, well, I can go 100% digital now. It's like, okay, cool. But you could also not.
It's true. I mean,
cool.
Yeah. There's something nice about the iMac, or sorry, the MacBook Pros, but I don't have one. I'm not Shauna. Shout out to Shauna Lynn if she's in chat.
Fun fact, I just realized that the chat that I had pulled up on our little window is the chat between us, not everyone. But sure. I've navigated to the actual chat on the live stream, and people have been a little active, so that's cool. Apparently, Shauna thought I said Prince is not dead, which
Prince is not dead.
Unfortunately,
I've seen him on the top of the Spotify billboards. He's still alive. It's good.
That's funny. Yeah, we gotta. There's a. Ooh, that's funny. Okay, we'll address those later. So, segue. I know I kind of threw this at you like 30 minutes ago, but is there? So I like to talk about like the projects that like didn't mean shit to anyone but you, right? Whether it be, you know, some small thing you made for a friend, something you made for yourself that you just really thoroughly enjoyed. It doesn't have to be a client project. Then it have to be the client, you know, the project you got paid most, and you don't have to show anything. But is there something that comes to memory that was just like, you know, something you sat back and you're like, this is really cool, and I'm really proud to have made this, and then why?
Okay, so that was not what you sent me. All right.
I told you it was going to be a rabbit hole.
Oh man! All right, so to me, as cliche as it sounds, I try to give a shit about all my client projects. I have a hard time just making things to make them. I always have to have a purpose behind like why I'm doing something. So typically whenever I'm building out a project for a client, I always have to like build out the strategy and understand the research and all that stuff before I can even start sketching. Some people are really good at just being like, that's cool, I want to do that, I saw that thing. And I think that's what Dribble has become now, where it's like, well, these are all trends, I'm going to repeat that. And it's like, all right, like, cool, I see you can use Illustrator too. That's interesting. So for me, I think I'm on this kick where I'm just like not posting anything online right now, where I just feel like I think my clients should have like, I don't know, I'm on the opposite wave of the show your work right now. I'm like, I think the good work will get the clients to be really happy, and they'll tell more people, and that'll be great. Probably the worst marketing move ever, to be honest. So if anybody,
especially because you just started your whole thing.
Yeah, freelance marketers, hit me up. I can pay you in craft beer from Portland. So I've got some things that I haven't posted online.
Cool. Yeah. Go back to the actual question. What I did ask was, is there something that means a lot to you that you've worked on? And I'd be curious to see if you have something to share. Because I think that's part of the root of this, is figuring out, you know, as a creative and navigating this wildly weird space. I mean, there's always that chance of just like you get stuck in the drone of the everyday. Like you're just making the work you have to make to get the bills paid and that kind of thing. But on occasion, you get the chance to make something that actually means something to you, or is meaningful for someone, or to someone. And I think it's cool if you have something to share for that.
Lose your face. All right. So this is Atticus. They're a law firm in SoCal, and they came to me for like an identity mark. I'll spare you the 40, 50 pages of research and strategy stuff that I present for all clients. This was the final mark. And like, essentially what it was like combining this really nice, elegant serif typeface Let me add a little bit more context. It's a law firm that is mostly digital. They kind of like connect people and their customers' needs through a digital like algorithm that they've created, which is incredible. So for me, it was like, how do you blend this merger of like tech and like old school law? Because they wanted everything to feel like your old, back in the day, there was like one lawyer for each little village, and you kind of just went up to them and you talked to them and you had your problem solved. How do you like bring that back, like Atticus Finch era, to like this modern tech environment? So like kind of just building out these marks into like a bunch of collateral for them. It was a really fun experience, like trying to like pick colors that felt like it was on brand, but still forward enough. It had a little bit of reminiscence with like old world. But what yeah, the badge is sweet. Like that came off really well, just like being incorporated with the like the shield and the A, and then translating like to the favicon being more of just like a Polaris star. But these are all things that like I haven't shown anybody. Like these aren't online anywhere. There's like a little pitch deck I have for like new clients that shows some of the stuff. Like I don't even have most of my Twitch stuff online. It's just kind of like I can do good work, and I think if I can convey that in a client call, then that's fine. So that's just that. But now the website. So we changed the color palette to feel a little bit more. Oh God, my huge ass screen. To be a little bit more like web friendly, because we're having problems with the CTA being green and the brand colors being green as well.
Sure.
But we partnered with Vera. I forget her last name. She's incredible. Like her illustrations are just absolutely astonishing.
Oh, those are illustrations? They weren't rendering clear on the.
Yeah. So they're full illustrations, taking the Atticus Finch character and putting them into scenes. And I think everybody's doing this trend now where it's a little bit like more ambiguous, but like, how do you show the care and thought that goes into each of these like details? Just like hiring the right lawyer, or like these illustrations feel so good and really help. Like they bring a lot of that texture back into the environment. So it's like really fun. Like it's just like helping a brand like get modernized and feel trustworthy in a digital world where everything can be spun up pretty quickly.
And without doing it with stock photography and a bunch of filler garbage assets. That's
yeah.
Awesome.
Can you imagine like if you have like an accident lawyer and you're like reaching out to them and they've just got like all of these like people with like if you just go to Adobe Stock right now and type in injury, you probably have like 15 people on a white background with like a head bandage on. And you're just like, all right, this is like cheesy and gimmicky. Like how do we build something that feels better?
Yeah.
So it's pretty, they've got really nice like brand. But like, these are all things. It's like even this, like how do you treat this collateral to like okay, it could have just been a just regular like world or US map, but let's texture it and make it feel a little bit more considered. I think it's just taking that care and showing your clients that everything that you do, like it matters to the end user.
Just that extra bit of concentration that shows that you went a little deeper than the surface.
How do you like seeing yourself?
This is like streamception.
Yeah. But there's a bunch of things like that, but it's kind of like fun to like help a small team of people like see their vision through, right? Like I think that's the most impactful thing was like the capsule skateboards guy, like that project like it's not grandiose. It's not for Tony Hawk himself or anything like that. The budget was small, but like as soon as I mocked up the signage where it's like his logo on a kind of warehouse thing, you're like, oh my God, like I can see that. Like our warehouse kind of looks like that. And it's like he started like getting teary-eyed, and you're like that's the reasons why you do this stuff. It's like it's to help people see the world in a different way. Like you have a lot of responsibility as a designer. It's like you should use it wisely.
And I think that's the core of it, because there's a million ways to deliver, right, the same project. But if you can show in a way that will relate to the person, you can get a whole nother level of feeling, right? You can translate what you had in your head
for sure
to something real, and it's a priceless interaction to get. Like there's some clients that just get it, right? There's some managers that understand like the thing, right? Mm-hmm. But then when you have that moment where you've got a stakeholder or someone who just really doesn't get it, and you can give that extra little thing, like an illustration with some texture or a mock-up that shows their shit in real life, and it just like their eyes don't glaze over, and you see that little spark, and you're like, now you see what I've seen this whole time.
Yep.
And I think that's my favorite part about working with small businesses,
Yep.
because I think they have a different appreciation than some larger ones that are just used to this kind of, level of work or this kind of scope of things. Have a million.
Well, I think it's like they don't care as much, right? Like I think small owners, right? Like they're so invested in the daily grind where it's like, I've invested my money into this project. I'm investing money with the designer that I could have been putting onto inventory or something else. And it's like, you're seeing trade-offs, but then you're like, oh, I just got this incredible value add from this person in a way that I never thought was possible. Is such just like, it's a really nice ability that we have.
Well, it's a relationship at that point. It's less of a project.
Correct.
Building this rapport. And I think that's the core of all of it. But that's interesting. So there's some talk in the chat from Tanny Lowe about your Land Yachts project. It says, what about working with your friends at Land Yachts while at Twitch? So do you have any? I think she's referring to when we were talking about passion project.
It's a boy. It's Tanny Lowe. He's an old skate buddy of mine.
Oh, there you go.
An incredible designer. I used to work with him at Maven Link when I was there. And now he's like the lead designer there. It's awesome.
Cool.
What about working with my friends at Land Yachts? So luckily, also not luckily. So Ken over at Land Yachts is incredible. He's a really great art director. And I think sometimes you get on calls with art directors and you're like, how did you get this? Like, what does the title really mean? I've worked with like a lot of like brand consultants that like send me a brand deck in PowerPoint. I'm like, all right, I don't understand why. How are you qualified for this job? And you're like, okay, great. Or screen grabs. Ken is like one of those guys. I got on the call and I was just like, wow, he's like, he gets it. He knows what he's talking about. I mean, everything that he does, like even this hat is done by him, and the insert inside of it has like skate and explore, which is the motto from Land Yachts. Like everything, he really puts in the thought and care with every single product. I hit them up for this project, I guess, right when the 2018 line was coming out. So they couldn't allocate any resources. So it really just became a passion project for me. It was like, all right, cool. Like I had at that time 2 designers that were pretty junior on my team. And I didn't really I was like, all right, I got this project. Don't worry, guys. Kind of greedily and selfishly, but like I know the industry really well, and I was like, all right, gotta have some time to play. So it was all stuff that I essentially designed those boards after work, and on the weekends just to get them done in time. And it was a week turnaround, I think, from like this initial concept to press check, and then like turning around the graphics. So it was super fun, just really tight deadline. And everybody.
So I think that leads up to another question. I think there's always that like work hard, play hard kind of vibe that people seem to put out. But like I wonder, like for myself, there's times where like I feel like I have to I want it because I'm so passionate about the project, like I want to keep working on it, even though I know like it's time to close the book kind of thing.
Sure.
How do you manage like your especially now being on your own, right? How do you manage your like, okay, this is my cutoff time. Like I need to either do this because you said you don't do projects necessarily just on a whim anymore. It's more the client work. So where do you draw that cutoff for yourself to make sure that you're number one, staying sane, 2, being able to do all that you need to do, and then 3, like keeping up with like little shit like this live stream, like being able to be out in the community or whatever, engaging with people. That's the answer. Alcohol.
There's a growler shop I can see from my window now.
Right.
It's my feel now. I don't know. I am a terrible person to ask about balance because to me, like I have really insane goals. And so that's kind of how I'm trying to keep my balance kind of in place, where it's like, I know that I have to keep this client work up so I can have my freelancers booked more so that they know that they're having work consistently. And because it's not about me anymore. It's about like my team and how do I provide for them, right? Like it's selfish to think that it's sole act. Like I have incredible people that are supporting me. So I also have to hustle for them and make sure that I'm managing the clients well, so that whenever I hand over things to them, that they don't have to focus on the client negotiations or the conversations around collateral and deadlines. Like that's all already been sorted. So I think they're like, I will sprint for a bit and then I'll like crash and I'll burn out and I'll take like a day off and then I'll go back at it. But like I work an exorbitant amount. I think I need to do a better job of like balancing, which like I just moved to Portland, so my life has been pretty hectic, but I think like in the next couple of weeks, I'll be able to get back in that routine where it's like, cool, 5 a.m. wake up, 7 o'clock, stop working, work out from 7 to 8, go back to grinding, like, and then that, like, it will be like a 12 or 14-hour cycle, at least a day. But like having a little bit of time before bed to like decompress a little bit and then get back out in the morning. But like, you don't have to do that. It's just like, and I could make a good enough living just not doing that. But like, that's not appealing to me. It's like, I want to get to that level and I want to get there. And I have zero patience, which is the worst part. It's like, I want to get there so badly right now that it's hard to like take those breaks. And I don't know, it'll come with time. It's just right now I don't have that luxury of like just waiting.
You lost me at 5 a.m. Fuck that.
Yeah. Dude, it's so good. It's so good. It's so good.
I'm like on dream number 3.
Oh, dude. No, you have like, well, you have to go be like an old man. You have to go to bed at 9:30. That's the pro tip right there.
Dinner at 9:30.
What are you? Oh man.
I'm like, so my schedule. I mean, when I don't have like a job to report to, like a physical place, like my whole regular normal, like I'll get up at a normal time, like do things, like completely shifts just by 7 hours. So I'm like up at 10, done working by 10:30. Everything kind of, it's horrible, but it is what it is.
No, anyway. I think to me, like, I think getting up early is great because nobody else is online. Like, I don't have to put out any fires from clients. Like I can really focus on the things that need to get done, whether it's an asset turnover or emails that need to be sent or documents that need to be written. Like all that stuff can get done before everybody else is up. They're like, oh my God, you sent something before you even got in the office. It's like, yeah, perfect. You're happy. I'm happy. And then like while everybody's ramping up in the morning, I've already got 4 hours of work and I can go like reset. Excuse me. And so I can go to the gym and like go for a run and like kind of get that headspace back again. So I can have like a second wind versus like, that 2 o'clock slump in the afternoon where everybody's like, I just ate. Now I'm tired. Now you're like lethargic for the next 3 hours and then you go home. It's like, no, you can't do that. So you just got to like find ways to like incentivize yourself to like get up, take breaks, not burn out as much.
Yeah, I think that scheduling, like figuring out what works for you is essential. It's one of those things. Sure. I mean, like I got into this flow from working the newspaper life. I mean, we had production deadlines of midnight every night. So like it was 3 till midnight, nonstop work. Like that was just the flow I got into for 4 years. And then that just dictated the way I was most successful. And I think it's to say, like, I think the same way you're using that time before everyone's awake, that like the night owl over here does it when everyone's asleep. And I think it's whatever, but the important part here is whatever works, right? So if that's worked for you, great. That's awesome.
And some people are so good at night. And I just like, I'm so shot by then. Like I can't think, I can't write an email. Like if I do, then it's like
spelling errors.
Like Hodor. I'm just like Hodor.
Speaking of my little cup, I don't know if you can read it. It says, I drink and I know things.
Wow, brilliant.
So you mentioned Game of Thrones. Cool. So we have another question from the chat. It says it's from Amy Lyons. She's actually our vice president at AIGA Raleigh. She says, Alex, you've done a lot of mentoring. What led you to start, and what have you gained through it?
Ooh, okay. So I'll answer that last part, and I don't think you really do mentoring to like gain anything out of it. Or at least like I don't. I think I get like I feel good about like certain interactions you have with certain people. You can tell they really, really appreciate it. And that always feels good, but I'm not out here to like have my ego like tickled, I guess.
I think it was more like, what were you able to learn from it? Like, what was like, you're like, oh, this is great. I don't think it's more like transactional. Yeah.
No, totally. I think for me, I just like every time I have those interactions with people, I come back a little bit more inspired, right? Like, I think typically when I'm mentoring people, they're probably pretty early in their career. And they're just like, they're so excited about something. And it's just like, I want to do this thing that you're doing. And I think it's super cool. And it's like, yeah, it is, and especially like, even after like, I remember having like a meeting that went terribly with like internally at a team. And then I had this like mentorship meeting afterwards and I was like, I can't go in there. Like I'm just gonna be such a bummer, right? Like I'd be like, no, kid, don't do this. Like it's awful. Don't go in there, But then like I remember coming back out of that meeting, and I was just like, man, like that's that moment of delight that they're experiencing right now. Like I've become so like, like you become used to that feeling again. Or it's like they're getting excited about it because they're finding something new and exciting, and I get that back from them. Why did I get into mentoring? I think it's because I've had a lot of just really bad like manager experiences or people that were like seen to be like senior designers like around me that told me I can't do this and I should like stop or like bash my work on a call with a client. I was like, oh, this is harsh. Like don't mind Alex, he's not a designer, he's just a developer. I was like, oh, okay. Okay, cool. This is awkward. So like things like that. I was like, all right, I gotta do something to like be the opposite driving factor in the world. Like, how do I help inspire people? And like, how do I create a work environment for people that are working with me or for me that feel that same way? Like, how do I bring that into the world? So that's kind of what I try to do with mentoring.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's almost a regurgitation of what you've had to go through, right? And how to what lessons learned. So that's interesting. So to wrap up, I think what could be interesting is the kind of like we talked about before. I mean, the idea behind this live stream was to talk about the spark, right, and how you started it and kept it going. And you also talked about how you use sprints essentially to get your work done, and sometimes it causes that random burnout at ends of projects. So to close out, I think burnout is something everyone hits, right? Doesn't matter what your level is, new, been in the industry 20 years, doesn't matter. So what would be 3, if you have 3, kind of like burnout prevention or maintenance things that you personally use to kind of make sure that flame doesn't actually go out?
Yeah, I think the first 2, well, it's probably 3, and it's probably super cliche. So I'll probably make it 2, maybe 3. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where it goes. So I think, and this is when I experience burnout the most, it's because I'm doing these things wrong. It's like I'm not sleeping because I'm trying to hit a deadline. Like there's like 3 o'clock in the morning things, then you're waking up again in the morning to like jam on something again. Like that, if I don't have enough sleep, I get like emotionally drained, I get physically drained, I get mentally drained really quickly. And that's not helpful for burnout, like preventing burnout. So making sure you're getting consistent amount of sleeps. You can like cheat here and there, but like really making sure that you're going to bed on time at the same time and waking up at the same time every day and like sticking to the wake up regimen. Working out, running is like, I think the best thing you can do for like your creative mind, like especially after you've just like downloaded a brief, like being able to go, like I was saying earlier, I was like, I think physical spaces are like how people like understand the world around them, because that's how we were born, right? Like that's how you relate to things. I think by running, you're jogging through like ideas and scenarios in your head. And a lot of my best ideas come through like thinking through things while I'm running or on a treadmill or something where I'm just like, I'm active, my heart rate's going up, my brain's getting a little bit more stimulated, and I'm like perceiving the world kind of around me. So I think that's a really passive way to like continue to get that spark going. And I was going to say eating well, but I felt like that's too cliche. And I like pizza way too much. So
eat what makes you happy. By the way, side note, pizza, I think they fucked up the food pyramid because pizza has all of those things on it. So it's like eating everything you're supposed to eat. So
cool. Coincidence that the food pyramid or triangle is also pizza slice?
Yeah, exactly.
Also, pineapple on pizza is delicious.
I'm team pineapple. So that's fine. That sweet and sauciness. Oh, so good.
Have you had it with barbecue sauce though?
No.
Take it up.
Also have the regular sauce and add the barbecue sauce, or you sub it out?
It's a great question. I need to go work at a pizza shop. I think it's just the barbecue sauce. They don't have tomato sauce on it. Okay. It's like some of the barbecue sauces have like a tomato base. So I would say it's chicken, barbecue, pineapple.
Oh, we threw chicken in there too. Now I'm getting
you can throw some bacon on there, Canadian bacon if you want to.
Stop talking. You're speaking my language. All right, cool. Well, I want to say thank you to Alex and everyone who chimed in for this first rendition of Fireside Chats. We're hoping to make this a monthly thing, maybe with Alex every once in a while, checking in on how Lazaris is going. But if we could give you a round of applause, it would be here. But thank you for your time, man, and thanks for everybody checking in. The live stream will be stored on our AIGA YouTube channel, so if you want to check back later or share it with your friends, etc., feel free to. But Right now, we'll say bye. Bye.
Bye.